Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, the President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors. Welcome to another of this series that I'm doing, conversations with leaders and thought leaders in the internal audit field on insights and advice in a very extraordinary time that we're living through. I'm joined today by someone who really is not going to need any real introduction. He's well known to everyone around the world, Norman Marks. Norman and I go way back. We've been working together on issues affecting our profession for a long time. It's been several years, though, since we sat down in front of camera together. And although we're not actually together today, Norman, it's good to see you and welcome.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to be with you again.
Norman, as I said, has a very deep background in internal audit risk management, more than 40 years. Served as chief audit executive of a number of companies, was noted evangelist in the internal audit field for a number of years, working with SAP, and we're very delighted to have you with us today. Norman, you and I have talked a lot over the years about risk management and how velocity of risk sometimes can get absolutely out of control, but I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. I don't think anyone could have imagined a few months ago what we'd be finding ourselves in. You know, Norman, pandemics have always been a risk, but what is it that surprised you the most about the impact of COVID-19?
I think I'm not sure that I'm surprised by the impact, because a lot of people have been predicting this for quite a long time. I'm reminded that even President Obama talked about this, but successive governments have downplayed it and have not invested. But I think the thing that surprises me most as I think about it now is how organizations and even the market has not really responded. And I think we still have a lot of surprises to come. I work for global organizations, and so I'm very familiar with the supply chain that is extended around the world, and seeing how a calamity in one small part of the world can have a ripple effect around the world. And what surprises me, and I remember talking to my investment advisor, telling him that I felt that we had yet to see the effect on organizations and corporations because of the disruption in supply chain, and also because demand is going to shrink so much, and people really need to rethink their entire organization. So I don't think people were, it's not so much that the COVID-19 was a surprise to a lot of people. I mean, yes, it was. We were too focused on short term and diminishing and ignoring some of these. Let's not call it a great black swan or a great rhino, but an event like this. I mean, we've had situations like this before. For example, I worked in the hard drive manufacturing business when I was with a company called Maxtor, and most of those companies in that industry had concentrated their factories, their manufacturing plants in Thailand. And then Thailand was subject to massive floods. And all but one company was out of business for a while. That one company was Seagate, and they had a massive concentration of manufacturing capability in China. And they took over almost the entire market for a long time. So I think that it's not so much the events as the effects. I think we should have been able to anticipate that something could happen that would have devastating effect on the entire world and certainly on the entire business. And companies have not done enough to think about how they would respond in general. You mentioned I was in internal audit, but I was also spent a period of time as an executive in IT. And I was responsible for contingency planning, both on the business side and on the IT side. And one of the things we realized is that it didn't really matter what the event was. It mattered what the consequence was and how we needed to respond to it. And I think a lot of companies have not really thought through how they were going to respond, and so they were not prepared. And a lot of bad decisions were made. And I think another thing is that surprised me is that we've seen a lot of shortages, and people and companies have been pushed, sometimes by the federal government, push their manufacturing over to providing us with the materials we need in the medical industry to support the nation. And yet very few are actually voluntarily thinking about, okay, how can we now switch what we're doing to help the company, help the whole country and the whole world. So we're seeing small instances of that, of there's this one company in South Korea that's almost mopped up a lot of ventilator and testing supplies because they switched their manufacturing capability to do that. And they're now providing massive amounts of supplies to the whole world. So companies were not reacting to let's not call it an opportunity.
Right.
It is an opportunity in a way. It's not necessarily to make money, but it's an opportunity to build a reputation, do the right thing for the world as a whole.
Yeah, being good corporate citizens, absolutely.
Yes.
So, we talk about the velocity of risk. I put a book out a couple of years ago about the speed of risk. The velocity of risk in the first half of 2020 is running at almost warp speed. You mentioned about potentially some surprises ahead. If you look ahead to the second half of this year, and you were a chief audit executive and you were trying to put together some sort of a risk assessment to anticipate some of the things for the second half of the year, what would you be looking at?
So I don't think that far ahead.
No.
I think that in warp speed, we have to be thinking about what are we doing the right things today? And how can I help the organization do the right things today? I was going back, Richard. I mean, as you know, I was part of the task force that had another look at the definition of internal auditing. Mm-hmm. And then we drafted a mission for internal auditing. And it's very clear in there, although perhaps not as clear as I would like it, that internal audit exists to help the organization succeed. And what we should be doing is thinking about how can we help the organization continue to succeed today. Now, next week, maybe even today in some states, we're going to see some massive changes as people start coming out of this. And so what my role as a CAE would be, okay, things are about to change, and change is where the greatest risk is. We know that. So what's going to change? Are we prepared for that? Have we thought through all the different situations, and how can we help? Now, after that, the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that, there's going to be continued change. And are we able to work with management, work with the audit committee and the board, so that we can be providing all the assistance and advice and insight that we can? And then we've got to look longer term. So longer term, there's a lot of discussion about maybe we need to diversify our manufacturing. Maybe we need to start spreading out some of our other capabilities, maybe even our leadership role. And it's not just from country to country. Even if you just concentrate in the United States, and you're an American company, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get disrupted if you have all of your business in one location. I remember, again, when I was in IT, we were trying to identify a backup location for the data center. And our top executive, the executive vice president, said, well, there's one in San Ramon. And I pointed out that that was only 40 miles away from our data center. Well, the same principle applies, is we got to rethink, if something were to go wrong, mm-hmm. Are we going to be positioned to address that? And maybe we need to be rethinking how we conduct business, how we design our workspaces. There is just so much to do. And one of the things that I liked, you did it, and hearty congratulations to you, Richard, and to the IIA on the survey that you just did, where you asked internal auditors how they had responded. And there was some good and some bad in there. The bad was that almost half were still doing business as usual. The other half was at least trying to update the audit plan. And a decent percentage, but not nearly enough, was sitting back and thinking about how they could help the organization. How can we do it? And it's not necessarily by continuing to do the same kind of audit work. Mm-hmm. How can we help by going out and looking at plans for workspace management, plans for making sure that people have appropriate supervision and training, that we bring people back in an orderly manner, that we figure out how to protect people once they come back. There are so many things that internal audit should be thinking about to protect not only the organization, but the people who work there. And then to also make sure that we are supporting our customers. I don't know about you, Richard, but I am totally frustrated by the fact that the people I depend on, whether it be in a travel agency or the government, they're simply not responsive now. They're simply not responsive. And part of that is they don't have the resources. They haven't thought how they're going to contact and maintain contact with their customers. I think these are the things that internal audit should be thinking about. It's not a traditional audit plan. It's not a traditional risk assessment, because you need to be thinking almost every day, how are things changing and how can I now make a better difference, a bigger difference, and help the organization continue to succeed into the future.
That's really great advice, and I think good words of encouragement for internal auditors in a period of, a lot of uncertainty. A lot of our colleagues out there just almost lost by all of this and trying to figure out what role they need to play in their organization. So thank you for the great advice you give. Norman is a prolific blogger and author. I invite you to check out his blog, his website, where he posts his blogs regularly. Norman, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to continuing discussion with you in the future, and thank you for all you do for the internal audit profession. You are truly a valued resource for all of us.
Thank you, Richard. Great to talk to you again.
I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and I welcome you back the next time we undertake one of these discussions. In the meantime, thank you and enjoy the rest of your week.